Third party and your soulmate was with someone last night. What happened may surprise you. Watch this before nightfall. My beloved child, something changed last night, and the part you have not heard yet is the part that could completely change how you see your soulmate. There was someone else present, and the third party thought that moment would finally give them the answer they had been waiting for. But instead, one unexpected conversation turned everything in a direction nobody saw coming. Your soulmate was asked something simple, something that should have been easy to answer, but suddenly they became quiet. Not because they had nothing to say, but because the truth behind their silence was connected to you. Don't skip, because what happened immediately afterward is where this story begins to turn. The third party noticed the change in their expression. They noticed how your soulmate stopped pretending everything was ordinary. And then came a question that seemed to freeze the entire moment. If you could choose the person you truly wanted beside you, who would it be? Your soulmate did not answer immediately. They looked away, as though one name had already entered their mind before they could stop it. And that is exactly why you need to stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. What happened last night was not simply about who was there. It was about who your soulmate could not stop thinking about while they were there. Then something even more surprising happened. The person beside your soulmate began talking about the future, about happiness, commitment, and the one connection a person never completely forgets. Your soulmate listened quietly until one sentence changed the atmosphere. Sometimes the person you keep trying to forget is the person your heart keeps choosing. And suddenly, your soulmate reacted. They asked how someone could know whether a connection was truly unfinished. That question revealed more than they intended. The third party heard it too, and instantly understood that your soulmate was not speaking randomly. There was someone specific behind those words. Someone whose memory had remained stronger than distance, silence, confusion, and every attempt to move forward. Don't skip now, because the next detail is the one nobody expected. Your soulmate reportedly began describing that person without saying their name. They spoke about someone who understood them differently. Someone whose presence had changed the way they viewed connection. Someone they had compared others to without admitting it. And the more they spoke, the clearer the picture became. The third party realized exactly who was being described. It was you. That realization changed everything, because suddenly last night was no longer about another person getting closer to your soulmate. It became the moment your soulmate accidentally revealed where their deepest feelings were still pointing, but stay till the end, because the biggest revelation from last night was still waiting. After that conversation, your soulmate apparently became unusually reflective. The third party expected them to dismiss everything and continue as though nothing meaningful had happened. Instead, your soulmate asked one final question: what if I waited too long to tell that person what they really meant to me? Those words shifted the entire meaning of the night. Something inside your soulmate had been pushed to the surface, and now they could no longer look at your connection in the same way. The person beside them answered with something your soulmate was not prepared to hear: then maybe you stop waiting. Silence followed. Your soulmate looked at their phone. For several moments, they seemed caught between hesitation and a decision they had been avoiding for far too long. Something huge is waiting for you, because the story does not end with that phone staying untouched. Before the night was over, your soulmate made a choice connected directly to you, and when the third party realized what they were considering, everything changed. What happened next may be the real reason you were meant to hear this before nightfall, because your soulmate was about to do something nobody around them believed they would actually have the courage to do. The moment your soulmate finally reached for that phone, everything around them seemed to disappear. This was no longer a casual thought they could push aside and revisit another day. Something from that conversation had reached a place inside them they had been carefully protecting for a long time. They opened something connected to you, something they had apparently returned to more than once, and suddenly the third party understood why your name had never truly disappeared from this story. Your soulmate had been carrying unfinished words. Words they wanted to say but kept rewriting inside their mind because nothing ever sounded powerful enough. Don't skip, because this is where last night became completely different from what anyone expected. The person who had been with your soulmate noticed their attention was no longer in the room. Their eyes were fixed on that screen, and their thoughts were somewhere else entirely. Then came the question, are you thinking about that person again? Your soulmate could have avoided it. They could have changed the subject. But this time, they didn't. They quietly admitted that some connections do not become meaningless just because time passes. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The third party had expected last night to create more distance between you and your soulmate, but instead it appeared to remind your soulmate exactly what they had been trying not to admit, and then came the detail that changed the entire conversation. Your soulmate was asked what made you different from everyone else, and instead of giving one simple answer, they began remembering small things. Your energy. The way certain conversations stayed with them afterward. The strange sense of familiarity they could never properly explain. The feeling that you somehow noticed parts of them other people overlooked. They remembered moments that seemed ordinary when they happened but became more meaningful with time. Don't skip, because the surprising part was not that your soulmate remembered you, it was how much they remembered. Things they had never spoken about openly were suddenly coming out one after another. The third party listened, becoming quieter with every sentence, because the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Your soulmate had not emotionally erased this connection. They had tried to place it somewhere distant, somewhere they could pretend it no longer mattered, but last night brought everything back into focus. Then someone asked the question your soulmate could not escape: if this person appeared in front of you right now, what would you actually say? Your soulmate paused. And what came next was not a dramatic speech. It was something much simpler, and somehow much more powerful. I would finally tell them what I should have said before. Something huge is waiting for you, because those words were only the beginning of what they finally admitted. What nobody expected was the decision that followed. Your soulmate did not want another night to pass while wondering what might happen if they continued saying nothing. For the first time, they began thinking less about what could go wrong and more about what could happen if they never tried. The third party sensed the shift immediately. They realized your soulmate was no longer discussing you like someone from a closed chapter. They were talking about you like someone whose chapter might still be unfinished. Stay till the end, because this is where the story takes its sharpest turn yet. Your soulmate started preparing words meant specifically for you. They stopped. Changed them. Read them again. Then changed them once more. It was as though they knew that whatever came next could reshape everything between you. And just before they made their final decision, the person beside them noticed one particular line on the screen, a line that revealed what your soulmate had truly been holding back. The third party had never expected to see those words connected to you, because they suggested something much bigger than missing someone from the past. They suggested your soulmate had already imagined what it would feel like to have you back in their future. And the line they wrote next may explain why last night became the turning point nobody saw coming. What your soulmate wrote next was the one sentence they had been avoiding for longer than anyone realized: I never stopped wondering what our future could have been. The moment those words appeared on the screen, the entire mood shifted. Your soulmate stared at them because suddenly this was no longer about memories, it was about possibility. Don't skip, because what happened next surprised even the person sitting beside them. Instead of deleting the sentence, your soulmate began adding to it. They wrote about conversations they still remembered, moments they had replayed privately, and questions they wished they had answered differently. Then came something even bigger. They admitted that whenever they imagined finally feeling understood, your presence somehow returned to their thoughts. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The third party had believed enough time had passed for your connection to become irrelevant, but last night showed the exact opposite. Your soulmate was not struggling to remember you. They had been struggling to stop remembering you. And once those emotions finally had words, keeping everything hidden became much harder. But then someone asked your soulmate a question that completely changed the direction of the night: if you feel this strongly, why haven't you said anything? Your soulmate became quiet again. This time, however, their silence carried an answer. They had been afraid that too much time had passed. They wondered whether you had already closed that chapter, whether reaching out would feel unexpected, whether the opportunity they once had was gone. Yet underneath every hesitation was another feeling becoming stronger, the realization that silence had never actually brought them peace. Don't skip. The next revelation is where everything begins connecting. Your soulmate admitted they had almost reached out before. Not once, but more than once. They had started messages, reconsidered them, and left words unfinished because the timing never felt perfect. But last night someone finally told them something they could not ignore: maybe you're waiting for certainty when all you really need is honesty. Your soulmate looked at those unfinished words again, and for the first time, they stopped asking whether the moment was perfect. They started asking whether losing another opportunity would feel worse, and that is when the once-in-a-lifetime shift happened. Your soulmate began changing the message completely. They removed the careful sentences. They stopped trying to sound unaffected. What remained was simple, sincere, and impossible to misunderstand. They wanted you to know that your connection had mattered more than they ever showed. They wanted you to know that distance had not erased what they felt. And most surprisingly, they wanted to know whether you had ever felt that unfinished pull too. Something huge is waiting for you, because just as your soulmate seemed ready to make their next move, the third party noticed something they had completely overlooked earlier. There was a reason your soulmate had become so emotional last night, and it was connected to something they had seen about you shortly before that conversation began. Something small had appeared in front of them, something that made them suddenly wonder whether they were about to miss their chance completely. Your soulmate looked at it again, then back at the message they had written. And in that moment, everyone around them understood one thing: whatever they had discovered about you had just pushed this story toward a decision they could no longer postpone. Then the missing piece finally came into view, and suddenly everything your soulmate had done last night made sense. Shortly before that conversation, they had seen something connected to you that suggested your life was moving forward. It was not necessarily one dramatic announcement, it was the feeling behind what they saw. You appeared stronger, more focused, less emotionally tied to what had happened before. And that realization touched something deep inside them. For the first time, your soulmate wondered whether waiting any longer might mean watching you become completely unavailable to the possibility they had secretly held on to. Don't skip, because this is where the third party realized they had misunderstood your soulmate all along. They thought silence meant your soulmate had forgotten. They thought distance meant the connection had faded. But your soulmate's reaction revealed something completely different. They had been watching time pass while privately hoping there would somehow be another opportunity. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Last night forced them to understand that opportunities do not remain open forever, and suddenly every word they had left unsaid began feeling heavier than before. The third party tried to understand what was happening and asked one final question: why does this person still matter so much to you? Your soulmate did not answer immediately. Then they said something nobody in that room expected, because with them, I felt like I could become the version of myself I was supposed to be. That sentence changed everything. This was bigger than attraction, bigger than nostalgia, bigger than simply missing someone. Your soulmate associated you with possibility, with a future they once imagined but never had the courage to fully explore. Don't skip, because the revelation that followed was even more surprising. They admitted that meeting other people had not erased the comparison. Different conversations, different personalities, different experiences, and somehow there were still moments when their mind returned to you. Not because everyone else was lacking, but because what they experienced with you had its own emotional signature. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate finally understood that constantly comparing the present to an unfinished connection was telling them something they could no longer ignore. They did not need another sign. They needed to decide whether they were willing to be honest about what had remained inside them, and then came the moment that turned last night into a true crossroads. Your soulmate looked at the message again, but this time they were no longer rewriting the past. Choosing what kind of future they wanted to create. The third party watched them remove one final sentence, the sentence that made everything sound uncertain, and replace it with words that carried a completely different energy. Your soulmate was no longer asking themselves whether you mattered. They already knew. The question was whether they were finally ready to let you know. Stay till the end, because the biggest part of this story has still not been revealed. Just before making their move, your soulmate discovered one more detail about you, and this detail made them stop completely. For several seconds, they simply stared at the screen. Then their expression changed. Whatever they had seen appeared to confirm something they had secretly wondered about for a long time. And suddenly, the third party realized your soulmate was not preparing to send an ordinary message anymore. They were preparing to reveal the one truth about your connection they had never been brave enough to put into words, and once those words were finally written, there would be no pretending that last night meant nothing. Just when everyone believed your soulmate had reached the biggest revelation of the night, one final detail changed the entire meaning of what was happening. What they saw reminded them of a moment between you that they had never truly forgotten, a moment that seemed small at the time but had quietly remained in their heart. Suddenly, your soulmate understood why every attempt to close this chapter had felt incomplete. It was not simply because they missed you. It was because there were feelings they had never given a real chance to become words. Don't skip, because this is where their hesitation started disappearing. They looked back at the message they had prepared, and instead of hiding behind careful language, they decided that if they ever reached you again, they wanted you to understand exactly why they had remained silent for so long. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate finally recognized that protecting themselves from uncertainty had also kept them away from the one answer they genuinely wanted. Last night became the moment when wondering was no longer enough. Then came the confession the third party never expected to hear. Your soulmate admitted that there had been moments when they imagined seeing you again and wondered whether everything would immediately feel familiar. They wondered whether you would notice how much they had changed. They wondered whether you would still recognize the person behind all the silence. And most importantly, they wondered whether you had ever thought about them too. Don't skip now, because their next realization was bigger than everything that came before it. Your soulmate understood that they could not control your answer, your feelings, or where your life had taken you, but they could finally control whether they remained silent. That difference gave them a confidence they had not shown earlier. The third party watched the uncertainty slowly leave their expression. Something huge is waiting for you, because the person who had spent so long avoiding one conversation was suddenly preparing themselves to face it. Not with promises. Not with dramatic declarations. Just with the truth they had carried privately for far too long, and before the night ended, your soulmate made one internal decision that may become the turning point of this entire connection. If an opportunity to speak honestly with you appears, they do not want to run from it again. The third party could see that something had permanently shifted. Last night had started with another person nearby, unanswered questions, and emotions nobody expected to surface. But it ended with your soulmate thinking about you more clearly than before. Stay till the end, because the most surprising part is what this means now. The third party entered that moment believing your connection belonged to yesterday, yet they walked away realizing your soulmate was still questioning what tomorrow with you could look like. And somewhere between the memories, the unfinished message, and that final realization, your soulmate understood something they could no longer hide from themselves. Sometimes the connection you spend the longest trying to understand is the one that quietly teaches you what you truly want. And after everything that surfaced last night, your soulmate may finally be closer than ever to saying the words they once believed would remain unspoken forever. By the time the night grew quiet, your soulmate was no longer thinking about whether the past could be changed, they were thinking about what could still be created. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because the third party noticed something different in them. The hesitation that had controlled the conversation earlier was fading. Your soulmate looked at the words they had written and realized they had spent far too much time trying to predict your response instead of simply acknowledging their own truth. Don't skip, because what happened next reveals why that night mattered so much. Your soulmate began remembering the exact moment they first realized you were different. It was not some enormous event. It was a quiet moment when you understood something they had not even explained properly. They remembered thinking, how did this person understand me so easily? That memory stayed hidden beneath everything that happened afterward. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The third party finally understood that your soulmate was not chasing an old memory. They were recognizing why the connection had remained emotionally significant even after circumstances changed. Then your soulmate said something that surprised everyone listening. Maybe I kept waiting because admitting what I felt would make everything real. Suddenly, the silence, the unfinished messages, and the constant hesitation connected together. Your soulmate had not needed more time to understand their feelings, they had needed courage to acknowledge them. Don't skip, because the next realization was even bigger. They began imagining two possibilities. In one, they remained quiet and continued wondering what might have happened. In the other, they eventually spoke honestly and finally received an answer, whatever that answer might be. For the first time, the second possibility felt more peaceful. Your soulmate realized that truth could bring clarity, while silence would only create more questions. Something huge is waiting for you, because the third party could see the decision forming before your soulmate even explained it. They were done pretending that ignoring a meaningful connection could somehow erase its importance. And when they looked at your name again, their expression carried something completely different from earlier, not confusion, but recognition. What happened before the night ended may be the biggest shift of all. Your soulmate did not suddenly have every answer, but they finally understood the one question they needed to stop avoiding. What if this connection deserves one honest conversation? Stay till the end, because that question changed their entire perspective. The third party had expected last night to pull your soulmate further away from you, yet somehow the opposite happened. Every conversation led back to the same realization. Every comparison reminded them of something unique about you. Every unfinished thought pointed toward words they still wanted to express. Don't skip this final truth. The most surprising thing about last night was not who your soulmate was with. It was who remained on their mind when everything became quiet. And that was the revelation nobody around them expected. Your soulmate entered the night believing they could continue carrying these feelings privately, but they left it understanding that some truths become louder the longer they remain unspoken. Now the question is no longer whether you affected them deeply. The question is what happens when the person who stayed silent for so long finally decides that silence is no longer enough. The silence that followed was different from every silence before it, because your soulmate had finally stopped running circles around the truth. They looked at everything that had unfolded last night, the unexpected conversation, the memories of you, the unfinished words, and the realization that time was continuing whether they acted or not. Then something shifted inside them. Don't skip, because this is where the entire night begins, pointing toward one unforgettable conclusion. Your soulmate realized that the person beside them had accidentally done something nobody expected. They had made your soulmate understand how deeply your connection still mattered. Every question had brought your name closer to the surface without anyone needing to say it. Every attempt to discuss the future somehow returned their thoughts to you. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate finally admitted to themselves that what they had been calling the past might actually be an unfinished question. And suddenly, the possibility of speaking to you no longer felt impossible. It felt necessary if they ever wanted genuine clarity, but one last surprise was still waiting. The third party asked your soulmate whether they would choose differently if they could return to one important moment between you. Your soulmate became completely still. Then came an answer nobody expected. They would have been more honest. They would have said what they felt instead of assuming there would always be another opportunity. Don't skip, because those words revealed the real reason last night affected them so strongly. Your soulmate was not simply remembering you, they were recognizing the cost of everything they had left unsaid. And for the first time, they were